Do you think Trump is committed to keeping the pressure on Israel? What is he likely to do you think, after his inauguration?
You know, Donald Trump has already proven to be incredibly anti-Palestinian in his first term as president, handing Israel's wish list of granting legitimacy to settlements, granting legitimacy to the annexation of the Golan Heights, moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem in violation of international law, and the list goes on and on. And at this point, we know that Trump is an agent of chaos, and the amount of chaos that he's going to create domestically in the U.S., he's definitely going to be busy with the battles that are going to be happening domestically here. In contrast, and at that point, whether he's actually going to maintain an interest in a ceasefire, I think is going to be very unlikely that this is going to be high on his priority list. All he wants for his own ego is to basically be the president who delivered the ceasefire, to be the president who delivered the release of hostages. But then if all goes to hell after the news cycle has moved on, I don't think he really minds that much.
Right.
And
I mean,
certainly he has no regard for Palestinian lives, as he's already demonstrated.
right. I mean, if we're looking at this from Israel's point of view, I mean, do you think they may have agreed to this deal finally because they finally came to the realization there is nothing left to gain from continuing their war in Gaza? I mean, it's pretty clear that despite everything they've done, the killing, the destruction, and so on, Hamas has not been destroyed.
Yeah, there's no way for Israel to achieve the goals that they have stated they wanted to achieve in Gaza, but I think that those are not the real goals. I think what they wanted to do is to destroy Gaza, to make it unlivable, and to use the words of Prime Minister Netanyahu, to thin the population down to a minimum. And they are actively doing that, and I think they want any excuse to continue that process moving forward. There is no future for Gaza to live in freedom and dignity that is on anybody's agenda politically right now. And that is simply a recipe for this crisis to reignite at some point. It's not a matter of if, but when. It will take a fundamental change in Israel's relationship to Palestinians and a fundamental change, frankly, in the U.S. relationship to Israel to draw a line and to say that this brutal occupation and living with Palestinians under the boot of Israeli control until the end of time is not something that is acceptable, that the U.S. should put an arms embargo and demand something different. And if that doesn't happen, unfortunately, we're looking at a very dire situation for Palestinians, even though there's good reason to breathe a sigh of relief for the foreseeable, for the intervening period, given the fact that we finally have the ceasefire that will give a break for people who have endured far too much over the past 15 months.
On your point on Israel's intentions in Gaza, since the ceasefire agreement was first announced on Wednesday, we've had Israeli strikes continue. Over 100 Palestinians have been killed. What does that really indicate about Israel's intent here towards a ceasefire and the likelihood of the fighting stopping for good?
Yeah, this is Israel's modus operandi. Every time there is an approach towards a ceasefire deadline, what they do is they intensify the killing and the destruction as a sign of dominance. That is how they signal their dominance. They've done that repeatedly many times with every time that there's a ceasefire agreement that is about to be reached. And also, I think it's important to note that they've had a ceasefire agreement in Lebanon now for the past couple of months, and they have violated that ceasefire agreement hundreds of times in Lebanon, killing dozens of Lebanese post the ceasefire. So the idea that Israel is going to adhere to the ceasefire with any kind of good faith or seriousness is simply off the table. The only question is, what is the scale of Israeli atrocities going to be in Gaza moving forward? We're probably going to see a reduction in that, given the fact that Trump's, reputation hangs in the balance at this point, and I don't think they want to upset the incoming president, especially when they have very high hopes for the fact that Trump is going to be granting them West Bank annexation, as has been speculated, or any other policies that they would want to pursue with the blessing of the incoming president.